today to the back half of the Noah story. This is Noah part 3. The part 1 was looking at like unzipping the text. Lynn, could you grab a Chumash and give it to Nancy, please? We've got 1,500 copies of the book. The
99.
yeah. Part 1, we sort of like unzipped it, like looking at, like, I just want to take the opportunity because Noah is like one of the easier places to do it. Look at source criticism, the idea of possible authorship, so the documentary hypothesis of where of the earliest sources of Torah, and then looking at the story as a whole, right? Which is what we did last time. Now the aftermath. Well, 2 things, maybe a bit of the aftermath, which is what happens after the Noah story, and like, what's the point of it? Because there is it's famously the flood stories are common throughout, like in that region. Like there were, this isn't the only one out there, which I don't know, like people like take it in different directions. Some people say, oh, there are multiple flood stories. That tells me that there was a flood. Other people say, oh, there are multiple flood stories. That means that they copied somebody else and that this isn't legit or real or something like this. So that I'm sort of in the fact that there are multiple flood stories suggests that there may have been, that there's some sort of collective memory of some massive climactic horrible event.
So it's estimated that at the end of the last ice age, which was like 8,000 years prior to the story, the oceans of the world were raised 400 feet. That means that the entire geography of the Earth was altered significantly.
So there you are, right?
It requires 8,000 years of collective memory.
Right. So which were right. So this, who knows? For me, the point of it is less what in fact happened than what is it trying to teach? Why is it teaching it? What does it mean to them? What does it mean to us? Right? Like those sort of questions that are with it each time. So like, it's not about the, there are always the possibilities of like, oh, what in fact happened? Like what might be the prompt for this? Which is what I think of as History Channel documentaries tend to do. I've never watched any of them, so I'm saying in the abstract. It's like, oh, what really happened? What really are the 10 plagues and blah, blah, blah. To me, like that's of
Midrash.
of no consequence. Good for you. Yeah, no consequence. It's conjecture, and also like on some, like for some people like that, and that's fine. Everyone likes it. Some people like coffee, some people like tea. I have like essentially zero interest in that, despite being obsessed with like the whole universe of this. It's more like, what's the point of what they're saying? So like like famously, so like for the in Gilgamesh elsewhere, like the flood stories have parallels, right? The gods being upset, one man being selected, one man creating some sort of vessel to save himself, his family, animals, things like that, riding it out, and the gods at the end sort of offering some sort of reward to the human survivor. The Mesopotamian story, there are a number of differences going on. Some of them I'm sure are noted in your books, not your book. And Art Scroll is a joke. The
That's how you feel.
well, it's just from a Haredi perspective, like the gods are upset with how noisy humans are because there are too many of them and they're too noisy, right? And so we'll wipe them out. Which again, like, so the key difference is that as opposed to the Torah's version, right, where what's God upset about? People are evil. There's violence, right? So one is, what's the difference between you're too noisy and you're too violent? A lot. One's a moral concern and one is not a moral concern, right? So like that, it's almost like, so like that's part of like when you say like what's the difference or why is one important, one is not, but like it's because the part of like what's going on is creating a moral world and saying that what the world demands of us, what God demands of us, what the world demands, whatever phrase you want to use, is that we act in a moral way, and that God, our creator, or like what we're supposed to be in this world it demands a certain level of morality, not shut up, you stupid kids. That.
Also, like the idea of why is that person chosen, right? So the individual quality of somebody that gets saved, right? What is it about that person that distinguishes them from the rest? So you have the story of Noah and the qualities that we talked about here in terms of just and working with God and all of those things, but then I think there's like moral piece to it. And then it's the idea of like, I can't remember Gilgamesh, but there was another story about what is it, Apocalypse, I think, was another flood story that was either prior to or co-occurring with Gilgamesh that they draw from. So they have a lot of similar themes also. And it's the same idea of like, why is he chosen? Hero, wise, right? Like different kinds of things are like a personal quality that doesn't necessarily have anything to do about relationships, which is interesting.
Right.
It's a relational quality to the idea of somebody that is just, right? Somebody that walks with God. There is a relational piece in that, in terms of like, you're not just good to yourself, right? You're not just a smart guy that keeps his wisdom to himself. You treat other people in such a way. You have a relationship with the universe in such a way. So I thought that was interesting too.
Yes. Yeah. So that I think all of that sense of that this isn't just a heroic narrative, but it's a moral one. And that's part of what makes a difference. So how does the Torah come into being? So you can have God reveals it on Mount Sinai, or if you think that this is sort of a human creation, then what makes it different than Aesop's fables or whatever else, or some other ancient story out of 100 other ancient stories that are out there? And I think in part it's that, which is to say, grounding us in a moral sensibility as opposed to a heroic sensibility, or the universe is morally neutral, right? Like so just to like pick up on some of that, this is from the JPS commentary on Genesis. What's in the Eitz Chaim is sort of like a reduced version of this, right? The full extent narrative that is found in the 11th tablet of the Babylonian Gilgamesh epic. However, the flood episode in that version is a late addition to the story. Its parent version was the Atrahasis epic. I think this is what you're referring to. The history of the human race from creation to the flood and its aftermath. There also exists a Sumerian flood name, Mesopotamian. The name of the hero differs from version to version. Gilgamesh, it is Untapashtim, which means he found everlasting life. Atrahasis means exceedingly wise. He's chosen for his heroic nature, and at the end, if I'm not mistaken, is made into a god. Like part of like his reward at the end is being elevated to godlike status, which obviously can't happen in a Torah-centered version where there's only one God. Noah, in fact, proves himself incredibly human in this sense. So now, possible. I would just flip forward to the to chapter 9, the aftermath. I don't want to do Noah before we have spring break. the one other like last similarity and difference. What we hit last time was Noah gets off the ark and offers a sacrifice from the clean animals, and God smells it and says, well, you know what, I'm not gonna wipe out humanity again. In the Gilgamesh version, that happens. There's a sacrifice, but the gods are pictured as eating the sacrifice, which is one of the sort of like, again, similarity and difference, right? The Hebrew god smells, but never eats. The Babylonian gods eat and are satisfied. And that's part of the point of the sacrifice, is feeding the gods.
But it seems to be that, the sacrifice, it seems to be a continuation of the seventh day of burning, because if you only pick
Yes.
two and you sacrifice one.
Correct.
Bye cows.
Definitely, right. Unicorns. Yeah. Right. So right. So that the sacrifice, of course, that Noah gives is uncalled for. Right. God doesn't ask for the sacrifice. Noah offers it spontaneously. And God's is the end of chapter 8, right? Verse 21, God smelled the fragrant odor. The Lord said in his heart, I will not again damn the soil on humankind's score, for the devisings of the human heart are evil from his youth. I will not again strike down all living things as I did, as long as all the days of the earth, seed time and harvest, and cold and heat, and summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease. Notice God's reaction is everything these people do is evil, which indicates what? What's the reaction to the sacrifice? It's like, it's not positive, right? So the first sacrifice, this is the second sacrifice that we've seen. What was the first animal sacrifice? So that was in what context? Cain and Abel. The first time animals were sacrificed, it led to murder. The second time, it leads to God saying, ugh, these people are so evil, indicating something negative about it, or possibly indicating something negative about it. But God's reaction is, these people are terrible, but wiping them out didn't make a difference, because whatever they were before, they still are now. Yeah, it's the same. They were evil before, their hearts were evil before, their hearts are evil now.
Yeah.
What am I going to do? I don't understand the question. Evil, as it were, is part of, so I mean, meaning the short answer is God. Yeah, God. Yeah. Huh. So the line that we start at nor should you. I would say, but yeah, no, the Tanakh, that's not a problem for the Tanakh. Like Isaiah is big on God oseh et hara, right? God is the creator of evil. I disagree. This whole point is that God's like, I'm not going to wipe them out again. If you do evil again, I'm not wiping you out. So it might be not forgiving by your standard. I don't think that's what's taking place here either. Meaning that God, see, the opposite seems to be the case. God accepts the sacrifice, but is like, and says, I'm not wiping them out again, despite the fact that they're evil.
Yeah, but how?
Well, I don't think forgiving and not forgiving can't get out of the forgiving binary. It's not is or is not. It's is when God thinks it's merited, and is not when God thinks that such forgiveness is not merited, like everyone else in that sense. What do you expect? Huh. Right. So there are times when it's called for, There are times when you're forgiving and times when you're not forgiving, which is what life is supposed to be, right? You're not supposed to say.
Wiped out everybody except for Noah's family. How did they not, how did he know, or she know, that,
God.
that Noah's family was not gonna be righteous, continue to be righteous, okay? And maybe Noah sacrificed that animal as a thank you to God for saving his family.
That, I think that's it doesn't say why. I think that's the most logical explanation is that it's a thank you, as it were. Though, and we don't know, it's possible that God's reaction is like, really? Like your reaction to your way of thanking me is by slaughtering this animal? Really? It's possible that, yes, I recognize that that you're trying to thank me. And I'm not gonna ding you for it, even though you just killed one of my things. So I don't know that it's not forgiving. And I don't know that it's not a thank you offering. I'm just saying that the text is saying that,
We can't eliminate Noah and his family because there's been no people on earth. I mean, for God's sake.
well, so right, it said so God doesn't want to, seems to be the thing. Can, but doesn't want to.
I mean, it seems that if the offering was pleasant, it's described
Right.
as pleasant.
The scent.
Yeah, the scent is pleasant, so there's something that is appreciated in it, but it's man, you guys really suck.
Right.
I need to keep doing this.
And as far as God not wanting to kill an animal, portion we
Not
read
just kill-
Saturday was pretty.
not just kill an
pretty
animal.
decent.
That-
And just
Be
have
here
it-
now, be here now, I would say.
It's killing
That's later.
one of each animal and of each bird.
Yeah.
This says, that's a lot
Right.
of killing.
It is a lot, like, so, yeah, it's it's not entirely clear, but it's possible that it's right. Took from every clean animal and every clean fowl and offered burnt offerings on the altar, right? So it's a lot. Chapter 9. And God blessed Noah and his sons, and he said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. That, by the way, is also a contrast to the Gilgamesh epic, where since in Gilgamesh the problem was overpopulation, afterwards there's not I want more, right? So here there's a request for more, for that it's to be fruitful and multiply. They should make more people, and also that's seen again as a blessing, right? Not So classical Christianity historically has a problem with sex, was partly arising out of Jesus, also arose, if you're familiar with the story, because Jesus wasn't married, right? Like there's an ideal of celibacy. You know the story with this, right? He noticed that here celibacy isn't the ideal, rather it's a blessing to be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. And the dread and fear of you shall be upon all the beasts of the field and all the fowl of the heavens and all that crawls on the ground and all the fish of the sea. In your hand they are given. All stirring things that are alive, yours shall be for food, like the green plants. I have given all to you. But flesh with its lifeblood still in it, you shall not eat. And just so your lifeblood will I requite. From every beast will I requite it, and from humankind and from every man's brother I will requite human life. Who sheds human blood, by humans his blood shall be shed. For in the image of God he made humankind. As for you, be fruitful and multiply, swarm through the earth and hold sway over it. So this is a big change in the story, right? One, what's consistent is the blessing to be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth. But the second thing is, after the garden, what was the relationship between humans and animals? Everyone was simpatico, right? What
God say you have domain over all the animals?
you have domain over them, but can you eat them? No. Out of the garden, they were vegetarians, it seems. right? God says explicitly, for food, you get the green plants. It's explicit. Now we get something different. Now we get this explicit, you can eat things. You can eat things that are alive. And rather than this sort of you can get along with each other version of before the flood, after the flood, they will fear you. They're gonna know that you're coming for them, and when you walk up, they're gonna scurry away. So this, and so you're getting this blanket permission to eat with a restriction. The first restriction is blood. Blood life, you must pour out the blood onto the ground. Like this is the requirement. And note the laws of Bnei Noach, the laws that I put on. No, this isn't uniquely Jewish, right? We have no Jews so far, right? This isn't a Jewish law, as it were. This is supposed to be a human law.
Now, previously they talked about clean and unclean animals, but here they don't make a distinction.
Right. Two things. One, if we were going to continue along with the source critique take on these things, this I think is the P source and not the J source. So there is that where one version had clean animals, the other version didn't. But yes, here there's not a distinction between clean and unclean, meaning all animals and all birds and all everything are permitted. There's not a sense that you're limited. Later on, there will be a limitation for, again, a subgroup of the children of Noah, but not for all of them. They can eat anything, right? Kashrut doesn't exist except for in blood. The blood has to be drained. So that's thing one, is you can do it. Now, why the change? Right, so that's the standard rabbinic take. To keep people from killing each other, that it's a follow-up to the previous thing. Oh, people are evil. So if people have an evil impulse, then take out that impulse to shed blood, take out that shedding blood impulse, not on each other, but take it out on an animal, right? And not on each other. And that's sort of like, if you like link up the people are bad line from the previous bit to this, people can have meat, to the next thing, and don't kill each other. You get that sense. It's not the only way you can read it, but it's sort of like the standard way of reading it, which is if you have the urge to shed blood, become a shochet. But don't, well, just that, like, so just that if you're, that was ideal, but I tend to think that people need an outlet, right? That he's like, all right, clearly there's this urge to strike out at something. And that violent urge is going to, let's channel that into meat eating rather than people killing. And that it's a way to like channel the urge. So that's why aren't people still vegetarian, as it were, because they need that. Though there is sort of famous, Rav Kook, the first Ashkenazi chief rabbi of pre-state Palestine, was said that, well, Adam and Eve were vegetarians, so like that's the ideal. And so that's what I'm going to be. And he didn't eat meat except on Shabbos, right? The Talmud says, "Ein simcha ela im basar." There's no joy except with meat. right? That like, if you're really gonna celebrate something, like, oh, that's how you know it's a celebration. You have some animal that you're gonna eat. It also says in Simcha Ela im Yain.
Rabbi.
You can only have a celebration with wine. So Rav Kook famously didn't eat meat except Shabbat and holidays. Yes.
I thought kindness to animals was a key theme in the Torah.
Yep. So, well, two things. One, I don't think kindness to animals is a key theme. Not causing unnecessary harm is. But that doesn't. But again, the Torah doesn't always take things to, and Jewish practice doesn't always take things to extremes. Which is to say, there is zero question that it doesn't frown upon eating, that the Judaism and the Torah itself does not frown upon eating animals. So yeah, so you're not, so that by the way is, I mean, so the don't be cruel is don't do this in an unnecessarily cruel way. But can you do it? Yes. It's not saying that you should never harm an animal at all. Does that make sense?
Does it say that we shouldn't kill animals for sport?
It does not say that, no. Meaning here, it doesn't say that. Does anywhere in the Torah? No. Well, that's for, I guess I mean, here, I'm in we mode. We in chapter 9 of Genesis is all of humanity, right? Yeah. So that.
When I was a kid, I mean, my grandmother and my parents were kosher. When they would buy meat, they would kosher it in the house with salt to get the blood out.
Right. Further get it.
Would this be the beginning of that type of a?
Yeah, I mean, so one, now it's just done in the store for you.
Right.
Right. It's just but yeah, so one, it's slaughtering the animal in such a way so as to drain the blood out, and then like the salt is to like further draw the blood out. But yeah, I mean that's the same.
But all the animal sacrifices come later, seem to be. You think of the Garden of Eden as all vegetarians, you would think, well, if there were gonna be sacrifices, maybe it would be animals. But they were.
Right. So Rav Kook will say that, when the third temple is rebuilt from Rav Yameinu, it's going to be with only grain sacrifices and not with animal sacrifices, right? So and Maimonides will say, controversially or otherwise, that all of those animal sacrifices are a concession to both the human impulse, like this is like framed as a concession to people's impulses, and to the Israelites' sort of social setting, right? That because the Israelites are living in a time when everyone's worshiping their gods through animal sacrifice. If they don't sacrifice something, they're going to feel, their neighbors are going to say, "You don't really believe, do you? You're not like even doing anything important. Like you're offering this crap grain." And you're you're not even offering something that you find valuable, and that the Israelites themselves wouldn't feel like they were in because they weren't sacrificing anything of value. The definition of a sacrifice, when you feel like you're really in relationship with somebody else, that you really care about them, often is linked to, did you do something that felt like it was a real sacrifice for you, right? Like part of parenthood is part of like as part of like any relationship. Oh, like we did this, like when you do something like that, you feel like you, you feel to yourself and others perceive you as really caring. And that required offering up animals. There's just no other language for it. Does that make sense? So that when side story, when in December, my father fell ill and was dying. Sammy, it was important to him to like come out to visit. And he took the New Jersey Transit train from Somerville to Penn Station, walked to the Port Authority, took a bus to Albany, where he caught an overnight train from Albany to Chicago, where he got on a bus from Chicago to Milwaukee, then an Uber to the hospital in Milwaukee. Now, could he have booked something normal the 2 days later? Of course he could have. But I said to the guy, I'm like, this like him going through this, it will help him feel that it's like the sacrifice, right? Like, oh, by doing something like big and unusual, like I will feel my devotion and others will see my devotion, right? So the animal sacrifices are like this, or we do it all the time as part of being, you do this for your spouse, or you do it for your kids, or whatever the case may be, right? Like sort of like when you do that sort of sacrifice, like you feel it and others feel like, wow, she really believes. So that I think all that sacrifice and stuff is linked to that feeling that you're a part of it and showing others and showing yourself, I care.
But animal sacrifice eventually became a substitute for human sacrifice.
Well, that also possibly like what the whole human sacrifice scene was isn't entirely clear. But in Deuteronomy, there's a couple of like side references to don't offer your children to Moloch, right? That people would show their devotion by sacrificing their kids or a firstborn or something like this, right? So that as well, meaning like, so you don't really believe you're not sacrificing your son. Our God doesn't want that, God wants this, right? So it's sort of like, it's like close enough, but like still stopping you short of that other thing. So it could be linked to human sacrifice as well, and which if you want to take it makes sense of why the you can eat animals, but don't kill people, like why that's closely linked here, right? He who sheds human blood, by human shall his blood be shed, right? And so again, this is your flashlight's on your phone, Norm. I thought you just wanted more Torah. It was like at a concert. Earlier, if you remember, like one take on like what's really happening is that God was relying before the flood on humans having an internal moral compass. I don't have to spell all this stuff out for you, do I? Like, don't kill people, right? That's the whole Cain and Abel thing. Like, just in your heart what the right thing to do is, but they don't follow it, right? So now, after the flood, God realizes, even though people are still the same selfish creatures that they always were, but now I'm going to place external law on them. This external law is going to be pour out the blood of the animal. Don't kill each other, right? Things have to be spelled out. And rather than internal, this is just in your heart and be nice about it. There's going to have to be external. Now I'm going to have to impose it on you. He who sheds human blood, by human shall his blood be shed. This is one of the great poetic lines in the Torah, because shofech dam ha'adam, ba'adam damo shafech. B'tzelem Elohim oseh et adam. So it's the words, it goes like ABC, CBA, shofech dam ha'adam, ba'adam damo yishafech, right? It's it's 6 words in Hebrew that perfectly mirror each other. So whoever sheds the blood of a human, by a human, so their blood be shed. Right. It's a law of retribution, right? And of threat. Like this like you have to understand that blood isn't cheap and that there's going to end up being a balance in this world. If you shed blood, then to balance out the scales of justice, your blood is going to be shed. Why? For in the image of God, God created the human, meaning like this is my image. So when you destroy a human being, you know who you're really attacking? Me. So so it's not just that you're disrespecting that individual, you're disrespecting me.
It just strikes me, we're made in the image of God. And yet we're intrinsically prone to do such bad things.
Right. God, right. So one, there's this idea of like the perfection of God again comes later. That I don't find that in the text. I don't find in the text here, right? That's sort of that's reading ahead, as it were. Here God definitely seems to be figuring it out. 2, it's also like it's the combination of this self-consciousness and a moral sense, which exists in humans sort of like to a degree unlike any other creature, and being in a physical body, right? It's one thing to be in a physical body in an animal, right? And you just follow your impulse, fine. It's the combination of the two that seems to be uniquely explosive. I think that's the story: self-consciousness, moral sensibility, and physical nature.
But okay, but why would the leading be to do? You just said in the paragraph before, I won't destroy you.
Right.
I know you can, right?
Right.
Why is the assumption that will be the way you'll perform, as opposed to you'll do the right thing?
I think that the focus of this section is like curbing the wrong thing, right? Like if you think about it, the rule here is spill out the blood of an animal and eat it and don't murder each other, right? Like that. So it's sort of setting a floor, but it doesn't mean that people aren't going to also do the right thing. This is just saying what we need to guard against here is the wrong thing. I mean, yeah, Leviticus and an Exodus, right? Yeah, that right, that the punishment should fit the crime, right? So the punishment should fit the crime. Punishment shouldn't be excessive, and it shouldn't be absent, and it shouldn't be too much, and it shouldn't be too little. Now I like to think anti-Jewish, or I tend to think anti-Jewish polemic that an eye for an eye is a bad thing. I strongly disagree. It means the punishment should fit the crime. Yeah. You want them to build you want them to build a prison? But again, like it's sort of like you want them to build a prison. Like this is what it is. They're not going to there's no system of incarceration, right? That's like asking them to have an iPhone. Right? So yeah. Yeah. I explained everything. I can't believe, yeah. Well, It all would be clear.
So what's the incentive for them to do the right thing?
Well, I mean, they were just spared. I mean, I don't know, like that sort of, I don't know, I don't know that they're glass half empty. Right? Like they're like, what's the incentive for them to do the right thing? They're appreciative of being alive.
They also got a good look at what they got.
All their friends. I don't know that people, the reader might assume that it was an unjust punishment. That doesn't seem to be shared by the characters in the story.
I get the backstory, like he was put me through horrendous events, and we're just gonna do what we want to do.
The internal, well, that could be a reaction. The internal emotional lives of the passengers on the Ark is not discussed. That's a big opening for Midrash. Like again, you can spin out that story. How would it feel? And that's a good story. How would it feel to be on the Ark? How would it feel to lose all your friends? Yeah, like so, and that could be what happens to Noah next, right? But like but yeah, like the incentive to do the right thing may be then as now that it's the right thing. And the
can happen if you
right.
don't do the right
The
thing.
disincentive is like, again, is that spilling human blood will be punished, and it will be punished in kind. Right, and it will be punished in kind. Verse 8. And God said to Noah and the sons with him, and I'm about to establish my covenant with you. Right. This is the idea. This is again the key thing here. Brit, having a series of rules and laws that just trusting people to do the right thing of their own accord is insufficient. You need some sort of formal agreement, right? So like that's a significant change here, right? ויאמר אלוהים אל נוח אל בניו אני הנני מקיים את בריתי איתכם, with my covenants with you and with your seed after you, and with every living creature that is with you, the fowl and the cattle and every beast of the earth with you, and all that have come forth out of the ark, every beast of the earth. And I'll establish my covenant with you, that never again shall all flesh be cut off by the waters of the flood, uppercase F, and never again shall there be a flood to destroy the earth. Right? So again, not that there's not going to be floods, but a sort of like all-encompassing, as you saw, like this, like where creation is turned back. It's not clear whether or not God is apologizing or it's saying, I'm not doing it again. There does seem to be, I think it's reasonable to say that there's a sense of regret. But there's a sense of regret before the flood. And now I think that it's reasonable to say there's a sense of regret after the flood, that because the point was people are evil and I'm going to wipe them off. And God's reaction right afterwards is, they're the same. So it's not that it cured them of being bad. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and enter into an agreement to try and make them not bad. To inspire them to be not bad. And my promise is I could, or I did wipe out virtually everyone through a flood, but now I promise I won't do it again.
With a flood.
With a flood. Correct. It is specific. Doesn't mean that it's not going to happen through some other means, fire.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. In the note, it says, I established my covenant with you, but on condition that you do not shed human blood. should murder become rampant, the earth will again be destroyed. That's forno.
Right, so that's sort of like this, a covenant by definition has to be two ways, right? Like any agreement is supposed to have two parties in it, otherwise it's just a one-way promise, right? Like, so what if God promises I won't bring the flood? Again, like what's the human commitment on that end? And since it's not spelled out, it logically must refer to the antecedent, which is don't kill people. 12, and God said, this is a sign of the covenant that I set between me and you and every living creature that is with you for everlasting generations. My bow I have set in the clouds to be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. So when I send the clouds over the earth, the bow will appear in the cloud. Then I will remember my covenant between me and you and every living creature of all flesh, and all the waters will no more become a flood and destroy all flesh. The bow shall be in the cloud, and I will see it, to remember the everlasting covenant between God and all living creatures, all flesh that is on the earth. And God said to Noah, this is a sign of the covenant I have established between me and all flesh that is on the earth. So the
Midrash.
that is the rainbow. That's the rainbow, which is shaped like a bow that you would that you pull back and fire, but like so that's the bow shape, and the idea is that it's pointing upwards, not downwards, as it were, right? It's pointing at the heavens, like I'm not aiming anything at you, like the
Midrash.
Yeah.
Nachmanides said the rainbow has existed since creation, but God repurposed it at this time to be a symbol of the covenant.
Right. Yeah. Does that mean that there weren't rainbows beforehand, necessarily created, or just that this is going to be the symbol? So that so if you're familiar with the bracha for rainbows, references that, right? There's every time you see a rainbow, you are supposed to say a bracha, and it is Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam zocher habrit na'man bevrito v'chayam b'ma'amaro. Right? Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, who rules the universe. Zocher habrit, remembers the covenant. Na'man bevrito, and like sort of is reliable in his covenant. V'chayam b'ma'amaro, and upholds his words. Right? Right, and obviously the water and the rain being part of like what that normally promises, part of what is associated with the flood, and like the end of it and the sun coming out is associated with the end of the flood. So that those are the that's the bracha that comes in, and the commitment. Does God regret here? I think the answer is probably. And note like that God feels like God needs a reminder for this. By the way, as long as we're at it, as long as I have this page open. There's also a blessing. It's actually the next one on this page for seeing a tree in bloom for the first time every year. Have you done this yet? Because so if you look out the window, there's a tree in bloom, right? Have you said the bracha over the tree yet? I have, so but I'll say it on your behalf. Because when it blooms, I'm like, all right. So every year in the spring, you're supposed to say a blessing over trees in bloom. And it's one of the very few blessings that you only get to say one time a year, right? It's Lahadlik Ner Shel Yom Kippurim. There's like one on like Tisha B'Av morning. Like there's like something like 5 or 6 brachot that you only can say once a year. This is one of them. Of burning the chametz, that's another one you only get to say once a year. But there's like 5 or 6. This is one of them, which is, so look at the tree. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. So lo chisar ba'olamot davar uvra v'ovrit briot tovot v'yelanot tovim la'anot b'hem b'nei adam. Praised are you, Adonai, our God, who rules the universe. which lacks nothing. For God created fine creatures and pleasant trees in order that humans might enjoy them. And you say, Amen, amen. That's the every spring. Yeah, it's a good one. And this is like a good spot for it. Like there, we got a few flowering trees here. All right, so we should two things. One, pause there. Two, I also want to do, I'm going to add in a Kaddish Shalem at the end, or a Kaddish Darabanan at the end of this. And again, we will be on spring break until it's like May 11th. Anyway, yeah, something like that. Yeah, thanks. Kaddish Darabanan. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shmer rabba v'almad v'yivrat kidutei v'amlich malchutei v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei l'chol beit Yisrael v'agalav v'zman kariv v'yimru amen.
Amen.
V'parach v'lamo me'al v'parach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shnei kutshav v'yifu Eila min kol v'yachata v'shirata V'shpachata v'nechmata v'amiran v'alma v'imru amen. Al Yisrael v'al Rabbanan v'al Tamidehon v'al kol Tamidehon v'al kol man adin v'araita v'atar adin v'di v'chol v'atar Eil l'chon shlama rabba hina v'chista v'rachamin v'chayin v'chim v'znare v'cha v'kadan min kadan avoton d'vishmaya v'imru amen. Eish Lama Rabba Min Shemaya, the Chaim Tovim Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael V'imru Amen. Say Shalom B'Mama V'Hu B'Rachamav Yaseh Shalom Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael V'imru Amen. And